I'm Clint. Thank you for joining me for Swatches live stream number 12. We will, of course, be doing portfolio reviews, paintovers, and taking your questions live from the chat. Thank you for joining me, and let's cue the intro.
Blowing the uptown bow down.
Thanks again for joining me, and in this one we will be taking a break from doing the live painting like we were doing last time. And forgive the interruption, last week I did have some painting to do. I had a couple of commissions to finish up, and now we can get back to it. Already got some people in the chat: Thomas, Sergio, Pamela, Cleta, Kim, Sasori Demon. Welcome everybody, good to see you back. Thanks for sticking with me through the break. How are you guys doing this evening? Jay Welch, howdy back to you. I could say that, I lived in Texas. Howdy. Hi from India, wow. You are totally on the other side of the world. Thank you for joining. It cannot be a convenient time for you. Belgium, wow, thanks guys. 5:33 a.m. You know that I record this, right? You can watch it later. You don't have to stay up at 5 a.m. Oh man, 2 a.m. in Finland, thought I'd join anyway. Well, hopefully we'll make it worth your while. This is, again, random. I do choose the galleries just with randomly, so I don't know what we'll be going over this evening. Now, we do need to crown a winner for last stream's challenge and get you guys kicked off with next week's challenge, or this week's challenge. Then we will be just going through portfolios, and if you guys can bring up some good topics in the chat, then we will be taking those as well. All right, let me go ahead and pull up the folder that has the entries to it, and we'll take a look at those to get started. There were some really good entries for this last time, so I really appreciate people joining in and getting a part of this challenge. We had 18 entries. I think that is tied for the most entries for a challenge. You guys are just all over the place. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of astounded of the spread that my little channel has had. We have Germany, Brazil, and Ukraine just right there. That's pretty awesome. Another environment challenge. Actually, this one is sort of an environment challenge. We'll get to that. Let's take a look at the entries first. I'm going to be going through quickly on some of them, and then I'll pick out the top ones to talk about. Okay, let me move this over. Okay, so this is what we had for last time. For some reason that does not want to come up with a, there we go. Sometimes it doesn't like to load those. All right, well, it's kind of wanting to be a pain with me, so we'll just do it this way. Okay, I will be posting all of these out on Facebook in the next probably day or two. So last week I did forget. We will talk about entries here in just a minute. Tanmay. We'll go over that to make sure you understand, or somebody in the chat will be able to answer it for you. All right, so I will go ahead and kick it off with the winner, and I gotta say, guys, this was close. This was not an easy decision. The top three, we'll go over the top three, and that's these right here. Just happen to be next to each other alphabetically. Top three is Benjamin Weissman with Bombajid and Chloe. So what did I like about each one of these? They pulled off all of the textures very well. There's also a good deal of creativity in each one of them. This one I was particularly liked the glass effect, kind of the crystal refracting version. One of the only people that really incorporated light into that. The only person that chose flame, I believe, as one of the textures, and actually allowed that to be a light source in the image. That did impress me. Getting some of the reflection onto the gold is pretty cool. Chloe's, I particularly like just how clean yours are. You have a very nice style. This is one of my favorite ones. Is your E right here with the vines. That was very cool. Also, your light hologram, pretty interesting. I liked that. I do have to give it to Benjamin. Benjamin does win this time. Like I said, he does well, and there's just one little, the thing that pushed it over for me is that it's one step further creatively. He added like a snake into the vines. That's a little bit extra. Another little extra. He has the fabric essentially torn open and the white is coming out, making the R. And like I've said in some of the other videos, it's not always just about execution. Sometimes it's how can you be creative with the concept. And they basically kept it even as far as execution-wise, but it's just that edge of creativity. So, Benjamin, you will be winning the free item from the SwatchesArt.com store. I will message you about, actually, you need to message me about that, and we will talk about it. For the other two, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, if I feel like it's needed, I'm going to do like a second place, which is I will give the other two a 50% off code. So if they do want to pick something up, they can get it at half price. It's up to them. As a just, hey, I appreciate it, beautiful work, and I want to try to help you out some. So those are all very beautiful. You can check these out on the Facebook probably in the next day or two. I'll get those uploaded. Okay, now let's talk about the let's talk about the challenge for next time. And that is, I want you guys to design some mushroom houses, buildings, abodes. And these are like overgrown mushrooms. Maybe it's on an alien planet, maybe it's a fantasy place, or maybe somebody's just figured out how to grow stupidly large mushrooms. But these would be for human-sized people. I'm not talking about like little ants living in mushrooms, or little fairies or something. I'm talking about human size. These mushrooms need to be like 20 feet tall, 20 feet around, that sort of thing. And of course, I'm talking about imperial system. Everybody else is probably using metrics. And so it's sort of environment design, but it's more like structural. Give me something that looks like it was made out of something organic. It's sort of grown, it's sort of built, and they're built into these mushrooms. So that is what we're looking for, and I need to have the entries in by next week. What you would need to do is create your images and then go host those on whatever your online gallery is. And if you don't have one, you can go to deviantart.com, they're free. You can go to artstation.com, they're also free. And just post them up there. And then when this video gets posted on YouTube, shortly after the live stream finishes, then leave a comment with a link to that image. Let me know that is an entry for this week's challenge. I will then go out there and get all those. Try to submit those before, an hour before the next live stream, because I cannot promise that I will get them within an hour of the next live stream. Usually that's when I'm already gearing up and looking over entries and prepping files and that sort of thing. So an hour before next entry, it is open, so anybody is welcome to join in this. And the winner, like I said, does get a free item from the store, and we'll figure that out later. Okay, let me take a look at the chat, see if you guys have posted anything, and we'll go from there. Yeah, so Tan May, that is the answer. Where can you post entries? Just send me a link in a comment to this video when it's posted. Hey Clint, just watched a new video and the compositions were super inspiring. Hey, glad you liked it. Yeah, just a lot of concepts on that new video. The most recent video I did for my patrons was making Ether Revolt, which was an image I did for the box art of Magic the Gathering. And I ended up going through something like 22 different concepts, 8 color variations, 2 composition changes, plus the final. And I talked through all those, and it was the longest project that I ever worked on. Yeah, it was pretty cool. Just talking a lot about composition ideas and directions and changing directions with the piece. Yeah, the voice volume might be able to be turned up. Let me try turning that up a little bit. I do have the AC on in here to warm this place up, and hopefully it's not picking up too much of that noise. Sassery, you guys are so talented. What am I doing here? You're doing what everybody's doing. You're improving, you're learning, you're making an effort, you're taking the time to get better. And that is exactly what you need to be doing. That's exactly what we all do. So you are right at home. So the challenges, monthly or weekly? The challenges are generally weekly. Last time I did have to take a break in order to hit a deadline, but generally they are weekly. So it's Monday, 6 p.m. to the next Monday at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. Yep. What headphones are these? I have no idea. I just borrowed it off the computer over here. No, I don't even see a name on it. It just has a little logo, but I don't know what they are. Yeah, tall, homunculus. Yeah, we just went over the challenge, and it is in the description. Design multiple mushroom abodes. They should be for human-sized residents, and should be a mix of natural and constructed. So that's what I'm looking for. And give a variety of mushrooms if you can. Not just one mushroom in different sizes or shapes. Maybe a mushroom growing off of a mushroom, and you have like a little window up on this one, a couple of windows down on this one, or maybe a mushroom it's in a spiral and they use it as a staircase. You know, get a little creative with it. And it doesn't have to be a fully fledged painting. This is more of a concept art piece. So if you want to do some in black and white, just lines, show me some color variations. If you'd rather just do a concept art approach where you show me different variations and ideas rather than just a finished piece, I'm totally good with that. I will be looking mainly at the concept and the execution. So you could come up with a really good idea and not do a really high finished piece, and you'll get points for that. Also, if you come up with a fairly generic idea, but your execution is really good, then I'll give you points for that as well. Ideally, you're somewhere in a mix between the two. We're allowed to share links to work for feedback from peers, or is that not allowed? Hey, if you want to get some feedback from peers, go for it. I don't have any problem with that. It's a good way to learn. I would ask that you don't have anyone else actually paint on it. So you have to be the one that does all of it, but if you want to get some feedback or get some ideas, then bounce it off others. Okay, then I think since there's not a lot of questions there, we will find some galleries to take a look at. Put OBS out of the way for a second and pull up my list of submitted galleries. We're currently at 171. So I need to set that into the number generator and see what we get. Okay. I'm going to pull this up, make sure that this is a live link. Occasionally somebody mistypes their address and we don't get a live page. Okay. We do have a question. I'm going to take a look at this first. I'm a hobbyist artist trying to get into Photoshop, Michael says, with elements instead of the full version. What do you think? Am I missing anything important from the full version? It's a good question, but unfortunately I have not used Photoshop Elements in, gosh, near 10 years. So I'm not sure what you have and what you don't. A simple thing to do would be just to subscribe to the full Photoshop for a month. You can go out, it is subscription based now. It used to be you had to buy the full program. But you can go sign up for 1 month for Adobe Photoshop, and you can just get one program. I think it's $10 just to get Photoshop alone. So use it, you know, pay $10, use it for a month. If you feel like you like it, then keep it. Otherwise, you know, don't. Without using Elements, I really couldn't say much more than that. OBS is giving me some problems. I'm getting some dropped frames. Sorry about that, guys. Oh, like I did mention, quick side note. I should be upgrading my internet. I'm switching internet providers and upgrading at my home. And that should happen tomorrow. So hopefully, yes, I know the stream is lagging. It should be clearing up here in a second. Then I should be able to stream from home, which might be a better connection than what I have right now. And I will likely be able to stream more often, because right now, to use this location, I have to break everything down, move it over, set it up, break it back down, move it back over, and set it back up, which is just a hassle, and I don't want to do that very often. So cross our fingers, hope the new internet will be better. All right, so we are going to be taking a look at the work of Bram Wilmot. Bram Wilmot. Okay, so this is out at artstation.com/WardyNewt. And as a fan of Harry Potter, that sounds very Harry Potter-ish, and I appreciate that. Okay. So let's just flip through these and see kind of what we have. And angel character pieces. I want to flip through a couple of these first, as usual, to get an idea of the sort of content that they do and what the sort of like that glowing edge on the sword with a dark blade. I assume that's a sword, not the scabbard. Maybe it's a scabbard. Either way, it's sort of neat. Okay. A lot of character pieces. Looks like he's probably referencing some, I think he has references for a lot of his stuff. Maybe not so much for that one. That one's very fantastical. Okay, I will not be looking at mature content on this channel. I do try to keep my channel family friendly, so I will be passing over those. And if you do submit a gallery that does have that stuff, do realize I will be having to pass over that for this. That's definitely one of his better pieces. White Dell. That's a pretty cool scene. All right. Playing around with the brushes, that's good. Getting different feelings. I think he's doing some studies. Those look like, yeah, photo studies off of photos. I don't know for sure, but it's virtual plein air. Okay, yeah, virtual plein air is actually a really good idea if you guys have never done it before. In fact, I might start doing that as part of the weekly thing. And that is, you go out to something like Google Earth, and you pick somewhere you've never been, and you roam around on Street View until you find something interesting, some cool view of some place, and you paint it, and you give yourself a limited time frame as if you were painting there live, so perhaps an hour maximum, and you paint that scene. And it can be a lot of fun. It's And it's obviously not like painting in person, but it's a fresh new place and it puts that sort of constraint on you, so you're not putting in a lot of detail. You learn to simplify it. Yeah, so a lot of virtual plenairs. Good way to study. Good way to do that. Okay, so most of those, that's what we're looking at there. Okay. And then he gets on. Okay, let's go ahead and skip to some of this other stuff. So always paying attention to lighting. That's good. Yeah, there's, okay, what am I liking? What am I having a problem with? We can't take time to go through every single thing. I feel like a lot of the stuff is it's a little hard. I've seen work like this before. It's not a simple thing to address. I guess one of the things is I feel like it's not completely consistent. There's not an overall idea as far as lighting and color. That would be something on this one. And that the value scheme sort of works. This is all generally darker, that's generally lighter. But like you would expect the light to be really warm and maybe the shadow to be cool to simplify it. And then we have like the greenish light on the blades. However, you can take these scenes and push the colors a little bit so that it becomes more dynamic. And right now, it's not very dynamic because the lighting isn't that interesting. And lighting is a big thing. He's not making like these big mistakes with anatomy on this piece. That's not the issue. Even the design is pretty cool. I like the angel with the dark wings and you know, fantasy stuff going on here. But what if this light was warm and it was hitting her warm and then she goes into the shadow so that down here the green light from the blades is what is lighting this part down here so that you have this warm to cool as it goes down. I feel like that might be a little more interesting. Again, like the lighting here is very flat so that the hand and this and the face and this, it's all like completely even lighting. And I really can't tell that there's any lighting at all on the ground. And there's a different way to handle, like, sometimes you do get overcast light, a very high ambient light, so there's no strong lights creating shadows. And that's sort of where our problem comes up, and that you have these distinct, harsher shadows and light and dark patterns on the pants, but all the rest of it says there is no distinct light in this scene at all. And I would assume that if there was enough light to create this sort of light and dark pattern, then it would also be enough to create a different sort of shading pattern. It would also darken the face down a lot because that would mean that the light is coming downwards and it would shadow the face more. So that's it. It's sort of like each part is painted good for itself, but it's not cohesive as a whole. And I would say that what we need to do is maybe more studies or do a couple of little studies before the entire scene so that you know what the overall value and color dynamic is, or at least what your lighting dynamic is in the scene. Okay. Now this is a scene that I think could be really cool. Let's, can I view this? Can I just... Okay, there we go. Now, I'll talk about that one in Photoshop. We'll take a look at that. But that's okay. I think this is more like a character piece. Again, it's like on this one. The color scheme is sort of all over the place. We have basically this sort of analogous background that is a very harmonious background that all sits within a very slim color range. Then you break that up by having this blue. Okay, so now you've got, a different color scheme. And now we put in a white. Okay, and now you put in a purple. And so it's, then the lighting doesn't really, the lighting that is on this background isn't really the same that's hitting the character. Then that doesn't really affect this. So I'm thinking is like, how do you make your piece more cohesive? This one I think is an interesting idea. Oh, that's not what I meant to hit. Just zoom up on it a little bit. What we need to do here is really look at folds. It's very evident to me that you're just making up the folds and that you need to reference how this actually works, how the folds work in this situation. And another thing is, it's like you're suggesting where the edges of a lot of this stuff is, and there's a general chalkiness, suggested edge to everything. It's like, and if I could be so bold as to presume, it's like they are unsure, they don't want to quite commit to saying this is exactly what it is, so I'm going to just kind of noodle my way up to the edge. I'm going to just kind of tiptoe up to the edge, and then I'll tiptoe up from the other side, and then hopefully it'll work itself out. Rather than saying, I know for sure that's exactly how the fold needs to go. I know for sure this is exactly where the edge needs to be. And then that doesn't mean it has to be a sharp edge, but this just seems fuzzy. It seems unfinished rather than artistic. And there is a difference there. So, and that's something that goes through multiple of these pieces. It's like, he doesn't know for sure. I don't know if, I guess it's a he or she, I don't know. They don't want to commit to certain designs or concepts. This one's a little odd because there's this really strong warm light and I have no idea where it's coming from. And I would assume that there's like a fire over here or something. But if there's a fire over there, then there's no reason it should be getting orange light right here, because that would be coming from the front. But if it's coming from the front, then it should also be near on the close side of all this. So yeah, that's another one. It's just a little discrepancies. I think if they can take the time to work out those discrepancies so that the lighting is consistent across the scene. And see, this one, they did commit a lot more to this, and that's better. But let's commit to what the lighting is and what the color scheme and the value scheme of the image will be. Okay. Yeah, I feel like, okay, this is sort of talking about mood, but how do you go from this to improving it? Well, this is obviously a scene of kind of a terror. This is a very dramatic, kind of a horror scene. And one of the things that we could really do is limit the light. We don't need extra light down here to see the sides. We don't need this bounce light up on that. Now, was it on the reference? Probably. And I'm feeling that you don't want to always commit to your reference. The reference is good to get you accuracy in certain things, but that just because it's in the reference doesn't mean you need to put it in there. So for this case, you know, keep this lit so we can see that. But even by here, I would say that her hair probably needs to be going to silhouette. Hair to silhouette here. Then the body can be almost be going to silhouette and dark down here. Then these underlight these hands. Really play up that underlight. Then that blue light, we can have that blue glow coming out from under here so that it's her dark silhouette against the blue glow with the bright under there. You know what? I'll just say this. We'll pull it up in Photoshop real quick. Let's put it under desktop. Desktop. Okay. I think that's enough on that. We'll pull up some of these, do some quick paint overs of this, and then we will go on to another portfolio. I'll take a look at your questions as I pull these up in Photoshop so we can take a look at them. So can the mushroom building be high fantasy theme like, say, the Hobbit at Homestead, or should it be larger? No, that would be okay. So, yeah, Hobbit, I'm just saying don't make them size for like a little fairy. I'll make them so that they're humanish size. So, yeah, I'll let a Hobbit count. That's fine. Yeah, I hear a lot about Art Rage. They say that's fun. Henry says, guys, what's your opinion on including rough explorative sketches in your portfolio? Well, obviously, you said to you guys, but I'll go ahead and answer that as well. And having talked to other art directors and read a lot of articles on portfolios, etc., then I would say you want to keep out rough stuff, even if it's cool. Now, if you want to do cleaned concept art, that's one thing. Don't put in rough sketches. Don't put in rough concept art. But if you have a good idea, say you do this mushroom house, and you come up with your mushroom house, and you want to do 3 variations of that with 3 different color variations, and none of them are taking a final colors, like a final finished painting, that's okay. And I've done the same thing in some of my portfolios with the Alice in Neon Challenge. I've put some of those concepts out there as well. So they do like to see that you can work in variations, especially if you're trying to go into the concept art field. But make sure you can do them cleanly. Don't make them look, you know, quick. Don't make them look rough. They just don't have to be super detailed or super finished. That's the only thing you want to avoid. Okay. What book can I buy on making comic book art? Oh. They have How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, but I haven't looked in a long time. So there's probably a lot of good ones out there now. I don't know. I haven't taken a look. Okay, so let's grab these, pull these up in Photoshop. Give me desktop. Yeah, Scott Mintz-Cloud, his Understanding Comics doesn't really teach you. It's not so much a how to draw or how to make comics, but I would say read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, and it will really help you understand the medium. And there's a lot of things that you just sort of intuitively know about comics and how they work, and he really breaks it down so that you understand it. I would suggest reading that before doing it. Okay. All right, I will pull this up in Photoshop, and I will not be able to see your chat while I have it open, so just keep that in mind. I will take a look at your questions after I am finished with the paint over. All right. So on this one, what I want to do is limit the light so that she feels more constrained, and do that by making a multiply layer. So we're wanting to adjust the light so that we're using more silhouettes. One of the things is anything that is fully painted will get our attention, and silhouettes are obviously simpler, so that the eye will generally recognize a silhouette very quickly, but then it will direct the eye to whatever is more complex. So this area being the brightest, most highly detailed, complex part of the image will get our attention, and we will let this silhouette part then just remain dark, so that that is not the right layer. You know, I will draw those back in. That'll be easier than trying to erase that out. Okay. He's already established this blue light. Maybe the blue light has a significance. So what I'm going to do is add some blue light down here. And then let's play up some of the light. On the hands. Obviously, I'm just doing this very fast, so you would need to go in and work out all the detailed stuff and follow the forms and the folds more precisely. Hopefully this will get the idea across. I also think that this would do good to have, let's see, color change. His hands seem a little warm. I think it would be more fitting if they were kind of cold. Okay. This light was more dramatic. That is, we want to really push the shadows so it's more stark. Yeah, so I think the reference probably had a light over there. We don't really need a light over there for this. So we're making the darkness is essentially encroaching on her. Like I said, let's get the end of that hair. Let it go dark. So just the top of it is catching the light there. Then the cast shadow from the head. Can be darkening that. I'm going really fast with my brush stroke, so I'm just sort of blurring it with the smudge tool. Now, somebody's work that you could look at that this sort of reminds me of is Dave Palumbo. So I would suggest going up there and take a look at his, because he has a lot of good images where characters drift off into black and darkness, or some hand of something is trying to come out and grab somebody out of the darkness. So we have a couple of stray ones, kind of chaotic going through there. And let's darken that. Then we can come back with another top layer. Let's grab, yep. And then you can put those back in. And now we can just use the blue lines down here to tell us the form without having to use light to actually draw all that subject in. And we can have more of this stuff wrapping around her. In fact, I think you'd probably actually be better if you would just let the top of the hands go black and then use just a little bit of light to kind of indicate where the edges are. Maybe the ones that get closer to the edge of the fingers brighten up a little bit. And if you want to start getting a little more meta with it, then, you know, you could have like, you know, the black sort of starts encroaching in hand patterns, right? And so there's like hands in the shadows reaching out, just fingers. All kind of pulling into her. Now, to me, that's a little more horrifying because we've brought in a lot more dark to the scene. We've decreased the amount of light. Essentially, the light has become the hope. It's the happiness. It's the thing she's holding on to. And we've really limited that. So now it is a lot scarier, and we are letting more of her drift into that blackness. And let's put this on. So that is kind of the before and after. That's what I'm saying. See, she already feels like she's not as threatened because there's so much more light on her. But if we do this, then it's a lot more present. Like the danger is really upon her at that point. Okay. Oh, that's not what I needed. All right, let me take a look at the chat, and we'll take a look at the other one then. Framed Ink is PGMT talking about drawing comics. Framed Ink is good for compositional storytelling. You know what? I actually just picked that book up the other day from the from the bookstore, and I've yet to read it, but I'll have to go back there and read it now. Have Frederico, welcome, welcome. Emerson, good to have you. Okay, so not a lot of questions there, so we'll go ahead and take a look at the other piece. Let me pull that in. All right, so this one, there is some cool stuff here. I like the, I don't know, the nomadic monks or whoever it is out here just sitting in the sand with this big head here. That's kind of neat. Unfortunately, we need to make some changes to the composition because right now the most of the scene is the sky, and no no focal point is in the sky. So generally, you need to put your focal point in the largest part of the image, and the largest part of the image is the sky. So what we need to do instead is make the ground the largest part of the image. Drop this up here. Duplicate. So let's put this here. I want to make a little edit to this. Start by making these guys a little bigger. Some more size variation there. You know what? That's not going to be the best way to do that. I'll grab this one then. Yeah, we'll forget about that guy from the moment unless we can really quickly grab him. Okay, we'll do that. We'll grab him and put him back on there. All right, so I want to put him back over here. And now let's mesh some of this together. It's a little much. Why I decided to change that is I want that heel to break across the top of that guy's head. There. All right, so we moved into it a little bit, and I want to create a little more atmosphere because it feels a little flat. I get the idea that this head is supposed to be a long ways away, but it just feels very close. Like it might just be, 2 feet away from this guy. And I think it'd be more interesting if it was further away than that. So what I want to do is make a new layer. And I'm grabbing the head layer and I'm painting over it with lighten. So I'm just lightening it up a little bit. Okay. I'm grabbing around these guys. I also want to make another plane at the edge of whatever this rock is that they're sitting on. And I want to lighten everything up past that. Oops, I did not grab that correctly. Okay. Just separates that a little bit. Then I can separate him from the background. And I'm just picking the color of this sky way back there at the horizon, because that's what's going to be creating the most atmosphere. All right. And I do like the idea of the sand blowing, which I think is pretty cool. And if the sand is blowing that much, then it's pretty much going to completely obscure the horizon. So it's okay if that happens. And if the light is being obscured that much, then we're not going to have much direct light. That means that shadows are going to be very soft, and it's just going to be a general, probably light to dark pattern on the lighting of things. Oh, it's still set to lighten. I was wondering. So if we can get some of the sand to be blowing off of that, that'd be pretty cool. Make that more prominent. I'm going to lighten this back up here a little bit. What I'm going to do is to just really play up the sand blowing. And I think that would give more atmosphere, more of a feeling, a certain tone, something unusual, something different about this particular place, scene. And we can have that kind of shown in the background too, just wafts of blowing sand. And I think it would be good to show some sand like collecting up here too. Little piles of sand sort of kicked up around these guys. Yeah, that's the direction I would take it. I'd really play that up, and the sky could get fairly dark because of how thick it is with the atmosphere. And you can just have some of that light breaking through wherever there isn't a lot of sand going through. And it could be a lot of fun, something like that. And these figures are just almost silhouettes kind of sitting out here. Being a bit darker. Just looking at that head. That'd be cool. Let's click. Hey Thomas, see a question. Say about your future pieces in Spectrum. Did you submit your art for consideration, or did they approach you about specific pieces? No, Spectrum's always you have to send in your stuff. It is a pay entry, so it's like $25 per image to submit. And of course, there is no guarantee that you get it in there. So if you want to send very many, it can get very expensive very quickly. And I don't know of anybody that they've approached them and wanted them to submit stuff, but maybe they do. Let me back up. Sifter says, hey, I was wondering whether you could share some tips on managing time with someone who struggles to find balance between art and private life. managing time between art and private life. I would say something that you could do is set reminders on your phone. If you're the sort of person who doesn't keep themselves on time very much, that is, they don't know when to start and stop, or you get sidetracked a lot, just go on your phone, your iPhone, whatever your smartphone is, and set a reminder at 10 a.m. Stay focused, work hard, say something like that. And then maybe at 6 o'clock, it has a reminder that says, don't be working, go enjoy your life. And then another one at 7, don't be working, go enjoy your life. So that is already pre-programmed in there, and it will keep reminding you every day, and make sure you don't turn them off, obviously. And then after a little while, it will just start to ingrain in you that there are segments to your life. You don't always have to be working, and that should help. Also, make commitments where you have to be other places. So, tell a friend, yeah, join me for dinner next, Tuesday at this time. And then you have to be out there. Make reasons why you can't be working if you have a problem working too much. That's another one. Or set a goal. Push your deadline up. If you have a tendency to, stretch projects out too long, then move the project up so you really have to cram. And if you cram and get it done, you can feel good that it's out of the way, and you can just enjoy the rest of your time. Thomas says, question about your feet. Oh, yeah, you just said that. Emerson asks, I want my illustrations to look a bit more classic paint style. Some advice on how to achieve it. If you're doing it, I assume you're doing it digitally and you're trying to get a more classic look, then something you want to do is start by having a more classic color scheme, that is analogous color scheme. Generally, those guys in the classic paintings used analogous rather than like complementary color schemes. For a lot of advertising, game, impactful sort of art, then you use complementary colors. It's red against green, it's purple against yellow or orange. It's these opposing colors that make a scene very dramatic. Whereas that's something you don't necessarily want to do with something you're trying to get a classic look to. Instead, you're getting a more harmonious color scheme. So, research on analogous color schemes, how to get those, and start paying attention to how a lot of the classic art fits in that style. Another thing is obviously brushes. Now, I don't think you need a really fancy brush in order to get that. Something you want to do is stay away from using masks or clearly masked edges. So you want to work with a lot of brush strokes. And you also want to work large to small. So pay attention and go research what their painting process was for classical art. Generally, they would block in a bigger area with a certain tone. Then they would put in their medium darks, their shadow pattern. Then they'd put in their medium lights. Then they'd put in their dark darks. Then they'd put in the highlights. And so if you start going about it the same way, you'll get it in your head how they approach it, and that should help you between the color scheme and using the right process of how you build your image, and not using obvious digital signs such as filters, masked edges, and brushes that obviously classic images would never have. Pamela says, I talk to my cats, so does that count? As a cat owner myself, I can, empathize, but no, that doesn't really count for a social life. I'm sorry, the wind is kicking up. I keep thinking somebody's walking in, but the wind is fairly high right now. Do I know the work of Craig Mullins? Yes, I know the work of Craig Mullins. The guy is insanely talented. He's one of the fathers of the digital art that we all try to imitate these days. Okay, so let's take another look at another gallery. I will go back to my number generator, find somebody else. Uh, 28. Give it a second and pull it up. Suspension. Do I like Frank Frazetta's art? Oh, there is a lot to like about Frank Frazetta's art. Absolutely. It's not my style, but I tell you what, the guy knew anatomy and the guy knew composition, and he knew how to make a scene with a lot of punch. And I would suggest learning how he achieves that in his pieces. There's definitely a lot to learn from it. Okay, we're looking at the artwork of Alex Smith, apparently. Okay. Let me move some of these out of the way. There we go. Okay, freelance illustrator. I specialize in fantasy paintings that have a feeling of grandiose, awe, and healthy measure of mystery. Okay. Accepting the inevitable. Zan the Pyromancer. On the edge of a delve. Sculpting the earth. Yeah, that has a distinct Moorbacher look to it right there. I think somebody was probably looking at those. Time fading. Cool. Long since forgotten. Mother of the Garden. Okay. Yeah, very illustrative work. He's clearly not going for just straight realism. A lot of colors, really dramatic scenes. So I'm not going to critique it on, oh, that's not exactly how it would look if it was real. No, because that's not what he's going for. But for what he's going for, how could you do it better? Or how could you improve it? Can I click on these and get a bigger? Okay, I can click on it, but it's basically the same size. Okay, I like this piece. This is cool. I don't know what all of this is, but again, like I said, this is sort of just illustrative. It's subjective, and that's just fine. So it's well rendered. It looks cool. Somebody accepting their fate. Okay. Clear enough. Don't really have any problems to that. And I don't know really what you would change to improve it. It pretty much does what it needs to do. Okay. This one right now kind of just feels all over the place. I'm not sure what I'm getting out of it. I mean, I like the action. I like the feeling of all this. I just keep thinking, like, I'm not sure what the focus is. Is it this thing, or is it these? Is it her? Because right now, that's not really reading as fire to me. And I know that we're talking illustrative, but still, that almost looks like glowing thread instead of fire. So I know pyromancer means somebody who's, it's a fire starter. So I would suggest maybe revisiting how you're illustrating fire and coming up with a different effect than that. And also the juxtaposition between these two colors is just so big. I'd say maybe making these like yellow instead of make complete opposites. This one I do particularly like. You didn't go too dark with this. He's got a lot of colors still back in these. I like the different styles of that because honestly, caves do work that way. You don't just have one kind of rock in there. They do make different patterns, so that's cool. I'm pumped with that. This is neat, sort of the inner light on the shadow side. That's something that more people are starting to do now and pay attention to. It's lighting up the darkest part of the shadow so that it keeps it from going real black, and it's like it has a glow. This pattern is really good. Overall, I like this image a lot. These clouds, maybe overly chaotic for this scene. This seems very calm and very structured. Then this is just kind of like swirly, almost like it's a lot of wind is blowing all these clouds around. And I think it would be more fitting if it barely had any clouds, or if the clouds were a lot larger and a lot simpler. Yeah, just say calmer would work better. And maybe shifting it slightly to the green side would also work. Yeah. Compositionally, this is sort of odd to me. Like, this is coming down here and it's splitting, and the edge of this river is essentially following the edge of this cliff and this rock, when arbitrarily that should not happen, because this edge only exists because this camera is on this certain location. If I took 2 feet to the left, then, you know, this would be totally different. And it just feels like you wanted the river to be there, and so it just has to follow that edge so that you can see it. Where it might be better if it was a little different. You know, went out of the way and then came back, and we don't have to see it right there. Or if you had another river coming down from this side, and honestly, I think that might work better. If you had a little stream coming down over here, and then it ran down, and then it connected up with this one over here. And that way it brought you back down, up and down to this little tower thing. I would appreciate seeing just a little bit more of something on this tower. Like, there's nothing significant with the architecture. Maybe just something, a window up here, like a platform that rotted away, or the foundations to a building out here. Just give me a little bit more, because right now it just feels like a cylinder, and it's just a cylinder with a door. Give me something else, something that would, like, sometimes at the bottom of a tower it will have like little parts that come off of the sides to support the base of it. Or that used to be part of a building. So show me part of the broken wall out here, and then pieces of the rock that, or the foundation, kind of sticking out of the dirt. Yeah. Also, I think this would also be getting more light, because the sun isn't necessarily shining from over here. It's just a break in the clouds. And there's still a lot of light in this scene, but this tower is getting very dark. Yeah. I like this. This ground feels cool. The broken sort of changing terrain there. That's interesting. I would almost say play up the atmosphere. He's going for a very moody sort of atmospheric with clouds, sort of, you know, hiding along the base here. I would go with that even further. Really soften out the clouds so that you're losing edges of the mountains back there. And also, you're probably going to have more fog down here where the river is, because the river is going to be carrying cold water into this warmer climate, and it's going to cause more fogs to happen along where the water is. I mean, you can notice it in your car. I mean, I've noticed before. You'll be driving along at night, and there won't be any fog, but then you'll go down a little hill, you'll go across a bridge, and there'll be fog on the bridge. Why? Because there's water under the bridge, and that's where it's going to be kicking up that moisture. So, you know, maybe you don't want to think about it that hard, but there you go. Also, if there's that much low clouds here, then you're probably going to be getting a lot of this more obscured. It's going to be getting a little bit darker here, a little bit duller in the sky because of the low cloud cover. This would also be interesting if you had, and maybe you don't want to go this way at all, but if somebody had been going there for some reason, and one little path you can kind of make out leading your way over there, or just a couple little items that somebody left setting there. Like somebody had a camp, maybe there's a burned out campfire. Adding to the narrative a little bit, just pushing the mood a little further. Mother of the Garden. If you haven't already, I would say to him, go look at the work of... Shoot, he's a friend of mine. Does magic art. Oh, I cannot think of his name. As soon as I'm trying to say his name, I cannot remember it. It'll occur to me in a minute. Anyway, he's done a piece similar to that, and I would say to go to look at it. Some of the things that you could do, I would say it's getting a little too dark up in these branches for a scene that ideally should be very bright. So making these apples, I believe they're supposed to be apples, very, doubling the size of these, because apples can get, fairly big. So making those bigger, more colorful, kicking that light up and the color up on that. I feel like this face down here and this head is getting a little bright for the scene though, because it is getting a little more shadow down here. So picking that back up. I don't know what's up with the red reflection there, because nothing here that it's reflecting is red. So I don't know why that's red. With the flowers and the butterfly, perhaps doubling the size of those, get them really close to the camera so that the butterfly is, taking up this space here, and you have a flower taking up all of this, another big flower right here. You can still make out some of the stream as it goes behind them, but it gives you something nice and big and colorful in the foreground, and you can have that not be real shadowed. You can have plenty of light like coming through the trees and hitting that and brightening that up. So it goes kind of from shadow in the leaves to some light coming down there and hitting them, to shadow down here by the feet, back to light hitting these flowers. So that's how I take that. That's a cool scene. I like the idea of these things. Six-legged, they're sort of like dinosaurs, but they're mountain ranges on their backs. That's neat. Now, this is one of those places where that action really feels like the waves are moving. And these things, when they move, they're creating turbulent waters, and everybody's just coming out here to watch these guys. Hey, that's cool. I like that scene. I like talking to each other or something. The blood of Macedon. Some lights in the buildings could be interesting. They don't have to be really bright. Just to break up the shapes a little bit, unless this is an abandoned city. Otherwise, I would say put in a little bit of light back there. And, honestly, if there's that many people in a crowd, somebody's going to have their cell phone out. So where's the cell phone light? right? You don't have to put that in there, but I'm just thinking. Okay, I think enough on that. Let me take a look at the comments. I think the hair was meant to look like fire, vice versa, but I think the hair was not meant to be going around. Michael mentioned that. Yeah, I think that they were trying to get that fire feel from the hair, but the fire strands, it's like I couldn't tell if that was supposed to be hair or fire. If it's going to be fire, then probably work it in some sort of glow, not just like an orange thing, but allow it to be sort of red, and then orange, then yellow. And you can stylize the edge of it, and you can make it do, you know, unusual fire shapes. But yeah, I knew that color variation is hallmark of fire, so adding that would help to sell it. Federico says, question, this is a simple question. Do you struggle with procrastination? To some degree, I struggle with distraction more than procrastination. I'm not big on, I don't want to do it right now. I'm more about, oh, squirrel. You know, if you've seen the movie, I'll see something and think, oh yeah, I need to research that. And then I'll start doing that. I'll see something else and I'll jump over to that. And so I just have a hard time focusing. I'll constantly be going, but I don't always constantly go on the project that I need to be going on. So I'm getting better at that. And it really is a habit of just learning how to focus. I really do make lists, and that helps. I also set reminders on my phone, like I was talking about, to tell me, you know, stop doing whatever you're doing and go work on what you're supposed to be working on. Also creating weekly list of what I need to get done this week, and then breaking that down into daily, as well as watching videos that help with just encouraging me to be more structured, having better habits, being more effective and less distracted. So yeah. Okay, anything you guys want me to go over? Obviously, we looked at a couple of portfolios and talked about some of that stuff. Is there any topics you want me to go over? Painting, questions, techniques, anything like that? Let's see if I missed any of the questions up here. Pamela says, I have too much work life to do arts, and I've been commissioned to do a book cover in a week. Hey, that's cool. Congrats, Pamela. Glad you're able to pick up a book cover commission. Federico, getting rid of your social life is not the ideal solution for finding more time. I reckon if you just structure the way that you paint and you stay focused, then you can get your painting done in plenty of time to still have a social life. Yep. You don't want life out of balance, and I've done that before, and it doesn't work out well, because I don't care how good you can paint or what projects you end up getting if at the end of the day there's no one there. You can't, you know, share a meal with someone or go out and enjoy the newest movie or have some laughs, then it's not really worth it. Because at the end of the day, life is about people. It's not about art. All right. And art can be a great way to reach people. It can be a great way to make a living and enjoy what you do for a living, but it is about people at the end of the day. So make sure that you're connecting to people, and don't sacrifice art. Don't sacrifice your social life just for art. Now, there are some times maybe you have a commission. Maybe Pamela needs to like really, you know, close herself off and become a hermit and just work, you know, crazy hours for the next week to do her book cover. That's fine if it's a short term, but that is not a long-term solution. Pamela says, how old is your cat? My cat is she's got to be about 8 now. Somewhere around 8, yeah. 7 maybe? Maybe closer to 7. Thomas says, what do your friends and family think of your work? They think it's pretty cool, most of them. I would say that a lot of my friends are not gamers, so they don't really know. You know, I could say Magic the Gathering, and that doesn't mean anything to them. But they think it's cool. They think that being able to draw stuff and paint stuff is neat, and they appreciate, you know, the skill that it takes. I think my family thinks it's pretty neat too. So generally, my friends and family are pretty supportive of it, and it's allowed me to do some traveling and meet some cool people and see some cool places. So that's all great. Veronica says, greetings from Argentina. Hey, welcome from Argentina. Thanks for joining. Could you recommend some small daily exercise to improve in values or in the work of light and shadow? Sure, some simple exercises would be to draw things in limited tones. And that would be probably, if you have limited time, find a reference. And it could be almost anything. And maybe you even just look out your window. And that is, you give yourself, in one case, white and black. And so things either have to be white or they have to be black. And you don't have tones. You don't have midtones. You don't have gradients. You don't have cross-hatching. And you can maybe even draw in pen if you wanted to, so that it has to be one or the other. And so you think of terms of light and shadow, and that's all you're doing. And then you can start adding in little bits of, I would say detail, but texture to indicate texture on things, such as bricks. And so you can kind of indicate brick pattern. Another one would be to do the same thing, but add in like a mid-tone. And obviously you're sketching a pencil at this point. So you have white, gray, and black, and do a scene in just those 3 tones. And that's also a good way. I would say if you don't know what to draw, go out and find a web page that has good cinematography from movies. And just do little studies, little black and white studies that have 3 tones in it, and break down the total values of those movie scenes. And there's some really good ones. Like, go out and look at the movie Alien and Aliens, those 2 movies, sci-fi if you like sci-fi. And just look at the screen captures of that show, the movie, and do little studies of those. And that can be a great way to learn just kind of how values work, how the lights work, how shadows work. And it doesn't take a lot of time. You can sketch one out in, you know, probably 15 minutes or less. So, yeah. Soy Jorge Silva says, greetings from Chile. Hey, welcome to Chile. I've never been there. I've been close. Bolivia, I think, is the closest I've been to you. Next to Argentina. Can't wait for your new light and mood book. I hope it'll be available in your store. It will be. Yeah, so if you've been new and you have not heard about it, I am working on an ebook, on my next bigger ebook, which is on mood. And not just mood like, oh, it's so atmospheric and moody, but whatever the mood is. You want it to be positive and energetic. How do you get that? If you want it to be dark and, you know, horrific, how do you get that? Suspenseful, mysterious. And I get that topic and I break it down into 10 factors. These 10 factors have a large control over what the mood is. Now, some of those are a lot stronger than the other ones, but it's always nice to round things out to 10 instead of like 8 or 11. So, like, lighting and colors are probably the 2 biggest ones, but composition is also a really big one. How you compose your image, your camera angle, your viewpoint, that sort of thing. And I'm currently working on that, and it's ended up being a lot bigger project than I anticipated. I am hoping to get that done for next month's Patreon reward. So if you want to get that at the best discount and to get it before everybody else, then you want to become a patron at patreon.com/swatches. Yeah. Okay, that is the end of the questions that I see here. No, here we go. One more. Hey, Clint, why does it look like a medieval dungeon wall behind you? Is this your studio? No, this is another building. Somebody's letting me use their internet here. I do some video work and record some stuff for guys here. And it's the only place that has fast enough internet. Right now, my internet is not good enough to do streaming. That's why I'm trying to upgrade my internet tomorrow, and hopefully I'll be able to do it from home. And this is just one of the back walls. So, yeah, Patreon at number 10, the $10 level. So, yeah, you would be getting the ebook at the $10 level. The $5 level will be getting like a kind of a highlights, kind of a streamlined version of the ebook. So some of the same stuff, it just won't go in as detail, won't have as many examples. So that's how I'll be handling that one. I thought you painted the wall like that. No, hopefully next week it will be at my place, and it'll just be the room that I work in most of the time. Yeah. Okay, we've been going an hour and a half. I'm going to close it up for tonight. Again, please join me for the challenge for this week, doing the mushroom houses, and submit those by leaving a comment in the video over this next week. I tried to submit it before an hour of the next video. I probably won't check them within an hour of having to do the live stream. So do that. Follow me on Cearley Art, facebook.com/Cearley Art to stay up to date in case the live stream time has to change. And if you want to become a patron and get videos out there, also join in the challenges where you can get feedback and critiques, then that is patreon.com/swatches. And of course, please, share the video with your friends, encourage them to join and join in the chat. Thank you for everybody for joining, and I will see you next week. Keep drawing.